Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of business law. Today, we're going to kind of cover everything from last week that we missed. It's going to be a really quick coverage over that. And then we'll talk a little bit more in depth over this week's stuff. So I'm trying to make sure I get everybody written down so I can give you credit for being here. So forgive me if I stop every once in a while to write someone down. So let's get started on this week. We have a lot to talk about since we were a little behind. I guess my first question I want to ask is, can everybody, Marquita, you said you cannot see me? Can everybody else see?
Yeah.
I do hear someone's TV as well. It's not my TV.
It's probably mine.
You can hit just the little mute button down in the corner and then we can't hear you. And if you want to talk, you can unmute it. Marquita, can you at least see me? Or hear me? I think you're the only one having issues. And if you can hear me, we can go on while you work that out. I don't want to hold everybody up because it looks like everyone else can see. Just kind of play around with it while you're working on that. Most of it you may be able to just go with hearing me. If you're on an iPad or something else, maybe try it on your phone or something. But everyone else is saying that they can see me and hear me. So we're going to go from here. So first off, is everyone getting into their homework and their book okay? I had someone that was having problems with their homework overnight. I can't remember who it was. I emailed them back, but I didn't hear anything this morning. So if you're still having problems with anything, let me know. A big chunk of that was just us. It's not you guys. I told you that. Let's see, Emily. Is Emily the only one? Are you the one that emailed me, Emily? Let me look. Homework is not saving. Are you logging in? Is it showing me as your instructor? You had problems in your class. So get with me tomorrow, and we might have to get with Dee. If you're still having problems, get with me tomorrow because we really got to get all this worked out. I'm trying to respond. Yes, make sure, like Jennifer says, make sure you're using the email link I emailed to you. We had issues with, now Diamond showed up. Okay, email me, Emily, because I try to remember all this, but I just don't. Christian, you were having problems, weren't you? Are you good now, Christian?
Yes.
Okay, so your homework assignments are working?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I never heard back from you today, so I didn't know for sure, so perfect. So Emily, email me. I use the email. Okay, email me. Let's see what we can figure out tomorrow. I'll get with Dee, and we'll get you going. With all the issues that we had with linking the homework and stuff, I moved all of week 1 stuff being due the second week. So nothing's due until this next Saturday. So you'll have all of week 1 and all of week 2. So if you've been working on it, great, you're ahead. If you're having issues like Emily is, we're going to get it worked out. We'll figure something out tomorrow. We'll get with Dee. Just let me know if you're watching this recorded, get with me as soon as possible because after this next week, I can't continue to put off homework if you're not letting me know that you can't get into it. So with that being said, go by the due dates in McGraw-Hill because I've pushed them off a little bit to give you the spare time for all the issues that came up. So let's get started. This week, I will be available a lot more than I was last week because I don't have the people in town from out of state. And someone just joined us, and I want to get them written down, but I don't see a new name. Oh, there we go. All right, so this week, we're just going to quickly cover last week's stuff that we didn't really get to talk about. Week 1. It looks different on the computer than it does my phone. I've been on my phone with it all day long. So chapter 1, again, I'm going to do just a quick go over last week's information that we didn't get to to talk about, and then I'll dig more into this week. It's kind of, last week is kind of, it's kind of a loss, kind of not. I mean, there's still stuff you learned, you're still in the discussions, you still have your homework you have to complete. But with all the delays and all the issues and the getting everything synced, it really messed with this week. And so we're just going to take it as a learning lesson, move on. And from here on out, we got it, other than the homework problem here or there. So remind me if I forget, there's 2 places you can access your homework. If you're not able to access it through one place, get with me and I'll show you how to access it through the second place if you're still having problems. I'm just trying to get PowerPoint to come up. And nothing's going to work properly for me tonight, I guess. Let's see. Earlier, my Explorer was working, but my Chrome wasn't working, and it looks like I might still be having that problem. If you remember what I said last week, my course connection works better in Chrome, but in cases like this, sometimes it doesn't matter. It's just not working. So let me log in here. And it was working earlier because I was going over the slides to make sure everything was up and up. I hope y'all enjoyed the weather today, because I heard that it's supposed to get cold here soon. Oh, that's this week. All right, let's see if this wants to work. Perfect. And like I said, it doesn't work as good in Explorer as it does in Chrome, so it's going to be kind of slow to download. While it does that, I'm going to make sure. Oh, it's there quick. Okay, so let's just get started. Chapter 1, it was about our law system, and it's a pretty interesting chapter. And we're just going to go through this really quick. It talks about, it pretty much this explains and gives definitions and talks about what things are in the law system. So a plaintiff, a defendant, those are pretty common words used. You know, if you're filing suit against someone, you're the plaintiff. If you're being sued, or like if you're arrested and you're going to court and you're fighting your case, you're the defendant. So pretty common words there. Applications of law. There's personal applications of law, business, and government. We'll talk a lot about that tonight as we, oh look, Chrome wants to work now. As we go through all of that. So sources of law, here's the different body of law affecting persons in our country. It's derived from constitutional law, executive orders, treaties, common law, precedent, case law, statutory law, administrative law. We're going to talk about a few of those tonight, a little bit more in depth. Some of them you may recognize. You've probably heard of treaties, you've probably heard of common law, case law, but maybe not so much some of the other ones, maybe statutory law, administrative law. The book really covers all those topics really well. So if you're reading through your chapters and doing all of your assignments, you're getting good information on all of that. So like I said, we're going to skip around a whole lot tonight for the first week's stuff, because I don't have enough time to cover it in depth like we needed to. So executive orders, a legally binding directive issued by the president to improve the practices of the federal government. Executive orders alter the manner in which federal agencies and officials operate. So right now I'm reading through some of this stuff. It gives really good definitions. I do have a lot of examples outside of the PowerPoint. So don't think that this whole hour is just going to be me reading at you, because it's not. I will read some, I will have examples, and I do have some other things I'll incorporate. Treaties, you've heard of treaties before. It's usually a written agreement between 2 or more companies that establishes terms of international relationship. Treaties become legally binding when approved by 2/3 of the Senate. Common law, a lot of people have probably heard of common law marriage. It's kind of derived from this. And precedent. A precedent is a court decision on which later courts rely in similar cases. So you always hear of a case going on and it's setting an example, and then later on they can refer back to the one case, and so that case was the precedent. So that's what that is. Just trying to cover some of the stuff really quick. Case law. At times, a statute or common law precedent is difficult to apply to certain cases. In such cases, a court may disregard earlier interpretations of statute or principles of common law or interpret them differently. So, though there are precedent cases, whenever a case comes to light, they may not utilize some of the aspects of that case for this case because it's a total.
What?
Are you asking me what, or are you asking someone else what? I'm sorry. Okay. A court's decision in these cases are also become precedent that influence future similar cases. So, as the cases go on, they can set precedents for future cases. Statutory laws. We won't go into that. Administrative laws. Uniform Commercial Code. UCC is something that I dealt with UCC a whole lot in the banking world, and we'll talk about that more in a future chapter. The UCC is the Uniform Commercial Code. It was prepared in 1952 by National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws. The UCC is a set of laws that govern various commercial transactions and are designed to bring uniformity to the laws of the state. So when I was in banking, we would use UCCs in cases where we were loaning against property that didn't have a title. So if someone were to buy a boat, whenever you buy a boat, we're loaning against the boat, the motor, and the trailer. And most of the times the trailers do not come with a title, so I would file a UCC against that title. So that's one aspect of the UCC that I used in a real life scenario. So that we may cover more in the future of this class. Classifications of law: constitutional law, civil law, criminal law, administrative law, and international law. So constitutional law is the study of the federal constitution, its interpretation by the federal courts, and its relationship to existing laws. Civil law, the study of the rights and obligations of individuals, includes the law of property, the law of contracts, and the law of torts. And we'll talk more about torts here in just a little bit. Criminal law, concerned with acts against society, criminal acts, and regulations of criminal activity. So robbery, theft, things like that, that's criminal law. Administrative law, concerned with conduct of governmental administrative agencies and their regulations. And international law, concerned with the conduct of nations in their relations and other nations. And I apologize, I do have someone trying to get on here and they're having an issue. Please log on through MCC. Okay, so we should have a student joining us in a moment. Moral law. Again, I want to get through this stuff pretty quick. We're already kind of past this stuff and moved on, and so I'm trying to remember if this is the one. State courts, and that's another thing this chapter talks about is there's state courts, there's federal courts. Where I work right now, I deal a whole lot with contract laws and the court system, and I'm going to use my business a whole lot as examples throughout this. So right now I'm pretty much a glorified collector in some aspects. I issue credit to companies. I go in and I make sure that they're paying their bills. And when they're not paying their bills, I call on them. I go to the property. I file liens. I can file small claims. I can sue them. And I currently have a customer that I'm working on where I couldn't file a lien on their property because it's on sovereign land. So therefore, it kind of binds the rights that I have to take and put a lien on the property and say, hey, I have property of mine that I've issued to this company in this building, and I want to lien the property for the amount of money that's owed. So where I work, we file what's called, it's like a mechanic's lien whenever you're doing a car. I can go in, say you're building a new home and you have $15,000 worth of my product in your home and you don't pay me, I can file a lien against your home. And therefore, if your home is sold or anything like that, I have that lien that you have to pay me off before anybody will buy that home from you or anything like that. So it kind of attaches that to your property. So I have a case right now where I couldn't file the lien because it's on sovereign land. And I tried to file against the bond on the land, but when I went to sue the bond company because they wouldn't pay, I found out that they are in a case that is above state level, and it's in federal court. So it's pretty far up there. And I'm only owed 10 grand on this account. And I know that's a lot in some cases, but in this case, 10 grand, I'm going to have to pay 20, 30, 40 grand to go fight and be involved in this case because it's in federal court. So at this point, I'm just kind of stepping back and waiting to see what happens because I don't want to get involved in the federal court and go to jury trial just to try to recover my 10 grand. It's not worth it. So if it was a state case, just here, here on the local level, I might go in and put my hand in and see if I could recoup my money that way. Fortunately for me, it is a good customer. They're going to fight their fight at the federal level. They're probably going to pay 120 grand to their attorneys fighting this case because they're owed a whole lot of money. And at that point, they will pay me. I really feel like they will pay me, but that's kind of where federal courts and state courts, it depends on, it depends on a lot of aspects of the case on where it goes. So I prefer not to deal with federal court in my company, but we'll see how it goes. It would be really interesting in the next couple of weeks if I was able to clear this account and tell you what happened. So I'll talk a lot about my company because I think it's really important to see where your classes that you're in, how they really do play into your career in the future. So, you're taking business law, but does business law really affect you? And you'll be surprised to find out as you go through life and through business and careers that it really does affect you. And a lot of the stuff I learned in business law, I deal with on a daily basis when it comes to filing my liens, suing bond companies, going to small claims court, and when I'm doing lien waivers and things like that, knowing all of this stuff has really helped me. So it's really important that you're grasping the concepts of this class and maybe utilize some of this stuff later on in your career. If you're just joining us, I'm just trying to cover last week's information really quick. Go back and watch the beginning. The only thing you really missed is that the due dates are pushed off. If you go by the stuff on the McGraw-Hill, the due dates there, that's what you need to follow. And somehow, let's go back over here to Explore. And I'm having issues tonight with Chrome. If you're just joining us, we already had that discussion. So we're going to move on to Chapter 3. We're not really going to touch Chapter 5 much. If you read through it, you got the general concept of it. So we'll cover this chapter, the next chapter, and then move on. And I'm sorry that my system's being slow tonight. Excuse me. Here's Explorer. Here's Chrome. We'll see which one wants to be faster. Usually my internet at home is really fast. So we're going to talk about trees in here in a minute. And next time we have a lag like that, I'll go over this Wikipedia. And I know Wikipedia is not a super good source to use, but next time we have a lag like that, I'm going to go over this Wikipedia I found, and it talks about treason, which we'll talk about for this week, so we can kill some of that lag. Chapter 3 talked about criminal law, and earlier I told you a little bit about criminal law, like burglary and stuff like that. So what is crime versus tort? A crime is a violation of a statute, and it is an offense against the public at large, punishable by state or federal government. A tort is a private wrongdoing that causes injury to another person's physical well-being, property, or reputation. And there's tons of examples out there for crime and tort. and we'll probably cover a few here in just a minute. It says here that some crimes can be both crime, or some actions can be both crime and tort. And this book, whenever I was in business law, we covered tort crime, and it was against contract. So this topic here is crime versus tort. Whenever I was in this class, it was contract versus tort. So it's interesting to see the changes. Let's see. So crimes are classified into 3 groups. There's treason, felony, and misdemeanor. So I guess we won't utilize this later. We'll use it now. So I practically just Googled the top treason cases, and it came up with a list of all the countries and some of the top cases. And I just picked this one because it was pretty interesting. I'm not going to cover the whole topic, the background, appeal, and all of this. I'm just going to cover this main little part here at the top. And this is an example of treason. So I might butcher this name. The Kawakita versus United States is a case in which court ruled that a dual U.S.-Japanese citizen could be convicted of treason against the United States for acts performed in Japan during World War II. Tomoya Kawakita, born in California to Japanese parents, was in Japan when the war broke out and stayed in Japan until the war was over. After returning to the U.S., he was arrested and charged with treason for having mistreated American prisoners of war. He claimed he could not be found guilty of treason because he had lost his U.S. citizenship while in Japan. But this argument was rejected by the courts, including the Supreme Court, which ruled that he had in fact retained his U.S. citizenship during the war. Originally sentenced to death, Kawakita's sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, and he was eventually released from prison, deported to Japan, and barred from ever returning to the U.S. So I thought that was a really interesting case. And there are a couple of interesting treason cases kind of in and out of the news over the past few years, if you really pay attention. But we'll probably talk about that more in a future class. So that's treason. There's also felony and misdemeanor. And felony, of course, you know, it's usually an offense on a larger scale. A misdemeanor is usually, if you have a felony, it's generally hard to find a job. It's usually a large crime. So misdemeanors are usually not as huge of an offense, but, you know, it's still breaking the law. Classifying the classification of crimes: treason, the levying of war against the United States or giving of aid and comfort to the nation's enemies. Felony, a crime punishable by death or imprisonment in federal or state prison for a term exceeding 1 year, so murder, things like that. Misdemeanor, a less serious crime that is generally punishable by a fine or a prison sentence of not more than 1 year. So sometimes like DUI, small DUIs, if it's not multiple ones, things like that, smaller crimes, which I'm not saying DUI is not a serious crime. I'm just saying it's not as bad as killing someone, but it's still it's a horrible crime. Crimes, however, not always committed in sensational style of blazing guns and wild car chases. There's different ones, like sometimes people are embezzling and things like that. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. Often the site of a business crime is the office of a corporate executive, his or home private club, or a nearby bar where employees meet after work. Another example would be sometimes you hear about offenders of child exploitation. They're at home on their computers and stuff like that. So that's another, it's not out in the public and everyone's not seeing this crime. It's not a bank robbery, but it is happening though you're not seeing it. Crimes in the business world: white collar crimes, security frauds, arson, bribery, false pretenses, forgery, perjury, embezzlement, extortion, and other business related crimes. And just to kind of break off into another little story here, I worked in a credit union, and I guess there was a case that happened before I started working there of embezzlement that went into it. It turned out to a huge story, and I didn't find out. I worked there for a short stint. I found out after working there that someone had found a way to slowly drain funds and embezzle money. And so, I mean, it can happen anywhere. I used to work at the largest credit union here in Oklahoma, and a story recently broke where there were some other issues involved here. And so you just never know. I worked for the company for 9 years, and worked with the person that was involved in this crime. And it's you never see it coming. It's always it's just always surprising. So it can happen anywhere. White collar crimes are usually those embezzlement things. So let's see. Securities fraud, arson. I have an interesting story about the arson one too. I graduated from a school, small school south in Oklahoma, and we had someone that we knew through through going to school there that actually burnt down the property of his grandpa's farm to get insurance money. And it was later found out that that happened. He was charged with arson, is serving prison time. So it happened to someone that I went to school with. It happens out there, and it's sad. But at the time, it probably sounded like a good idea to get the money to do things he needs to do, but it's against the law. Larceny, forms of theft types. Other types are robbery and burglary, bribery, false pretenses. These you hear on every day. Forgery. I dealt a lot with forgeries whenever I was in the banking world. And nowadays, where I work, we get concerned about forgery because I'm going out and I'm giving contracts for millions of dollars, and I want to make sure that the people who are signing the contracts are people who are allowed to sign these contracts. So when I come back later on saying, "Hey, you owe me a bill of $520,000," they can't go back and say, "Hey, I didn't sign that." And I did have that instance where an ex-wife and husband were business partners, and he was signing her name on some legal documents that came to my department or to my company. And I ended up having to sue these people and go in and fight. And she's saying she didn't sign this stuff. And I have multiple signatures, and it does appear that she may not have signed this stuff. So it turned into a big dirty mess, and it was all over forgery and failure to pay. And so it is a real life scenario that you will sometimes deal with, or I sometimes deal with. So that's interesting. Perjury consists of intentionally giving false or oral written statements under oath in the judicial proceedings after having sworn to tell the truth. So if you're testifying and this person hit this person, but you say, "No, I didn't see anything," you're committing perjury. Embezzlement, we went over that a little bit earlier. Extortion, the act of taking or demanding money and other property from someone using force, threats of force, or economic harm. The difference between extortion and bribery is that in bribery, both parties are willing participants, whereas in extortion, one person is willing and the other person is not. So bribery is saying, "Hey, I'll give you this. Hey, that sounds good. Okay, let's do this. And you'll do this. Great." That's bribery. Extortion is, "You better do this or I'm going to get you in trouble." So credit card fraud, identity fraud, that's something that I really, again, I have to be careful about in the business that I'm in, because all day long, I'm getting credit card numbers, and I want to make sure that, whenever you call a company and you're paying over the phone and they're going, "Okay, what's your date of birth," and making sure that you're really you, and then they need that code on the back and things like that. Sometimes it is obnoxious to give that information, but they truly are trying to make sure you're you. Another thing, just as my public service announcement out there, if you go into a bank and they do ID you, whether you're there every day or not, don't get frustrated at your teller. And I'm not in banking anymore. This is just my public service announcement. Be thankful that they are making sure that you are you and only you are getting your money. Same thing whenever, if for some reason at a cashier asks to see your driver's license, to make sure that your ID matches your card. Just be thankful that they're trying to protect you, because they're trying to prevent credit card fraud and identity theft. So that's my public service announcement for today. Whenever I'm ID'd, to make sure that everything's legit, I always thank the person, because what if my identity was stolen? It could be brought to attention at that time. So we'll cover chapter 4. We'll hop into this week. We're halfway through. So here we go, having the assignment instead of the PowerPoint. I'm going to close this out. I did see, while this is loaded, I'll try to cover a little bit something else. I did see that someone had talked a little bit on the discussion for this week. I did notice also that it said something about being an APA format. Let's see. And I'll talk about that, and then we'll go back and see if my course connection is uploaded. So here, and I know we're hopping off topic and then back in because my computer's being slow in uploading the PowerPoints. So it says to make sure, let's see, using your own words, conduct online to assist you in this discussion. Cite all sources using APA style for references. So you have to do this discussion. You have to cite your resources, meaning you need to have resources. And whenever you cite it, make sure you're using APA style. And you click here, and our wonderful Dee, the head of the department, has sent us straight to the link where it describes what APA is here. And something I will tell you from my last class is APA, I don't think everyone remembers this, and if you're reading this, you'll learn APA should be in alphabetical order. And so go through here, read the APA style guidelines and what the expectations are, and make sure that you are following what APA is. You can't just go in and paste the link of where you found it, or just put the name of the book. Follow the APA guidelines. So I saw that it just kicked in that it's ready. So that's the only thing I have to say about the discussions tonight is follow the directions. I will have to count off on it if you don't do all that. So tort law. So tort law was, remember, where a violation of the rights of an identified individual or business that has been wronged either intentionally or negligence. The law of torts does not deal with duties imposed by contracts, but is concerned only with the violations of private rights. Common torts include defamation, nuisance, conversion, and negligence. And you've probably heard of most, if not all of these. So I think it covers it, yeah. Defamation, you've probably heard defamation of character a lot. Harming of person's reputation and good name by the communication of false statements. So if you have Joe the barber and you're like, he is horrible, he's always out there shaming females, and Joe the barber is not like that, and it affects his business, and it's defamation. You're harming his reputation and good name of something that's fake. Maybe now women are up in arms and they don't want to go to the barber because you've defaced his name, and so that would be defamation. And sometimes I'm horrible at examples, and that may be a horrible example, but you get the gist of it. Defamation has separated into two torts. There's libel, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and slander. We've probably all heard slander, and I'm not quite sure if I, before this class, if I really heard of the other one. So, maybe it's libel. I don't know. Libel? That sounds better. The spreading of damaging statements in written form, including pictures, cartoons, and effigies, likenesses. Defamation on radio, television, and websites is also considered. Did we decide it's libel? Libel. I'm really gonna have to have Siri read that word to me. Slander, the spreading of damaging words or ideas about a person. So earlier when I said the barber hates women or whatever, and he really doesn't, that would be the slander. So we're just gonna, I think we understand what that is. Defenses to defamation, we'll skip over that too. So nuisance. Nuisance is the next one. An unlawful interference with the enjoyment of life or property constitutes a nuisance. So a lot of towns have those curfews, and if you're up after that curfew, you can get in trouble for being a nuisance, especially if you're a minor, or if you're running around with your loud pipes and you're causing a nuisance to those around you. That could be one. Private nuisance, a person who acts in a way that denies the right to a specific person or persons. Public nuisance affects the community or the general public. And funny story on this one, this wasn't business related, but I live out in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere, and I absolutely love it. And the reason may be because probably a week before we moved, we lived in Glenpool, and from the backyard, from the front yard to the backyard, there was this little gravel path or driveway, and grass had grown up through it, but we didn't own the property. We were renting it, and so it really wasn't our responsibility to go and deal with that. And we had moved our moving trailer, and it was a trailer that my father-in-law owned, so it didn't say U-Haul against it. It was just a big enclosed trailer. We parked it on that drive, that rock drive in the backyard behind the gate. Behind the trailer was the garage. It was a detached garage off to the side, kind of like you can buy on the corner, where they also have the covered carports, one of those kind of garages. So we parked it in front of the garage on the pebble driveway, and someone complained because it was a nuisance to them. It was between two houses on a pebble driveway that grass grew through. And the city sent us a letter saying that it was a nuisance and we had 5 days to remove the trailer, blah, 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 or be fined. And so, I mean, if you've ever been through Glenpool, you know that they have 500 cars parked on the road, and you're driving around them and barely able to get through some of them. But the city rather have them parked there than in the grass. And I guess they considered where it was parked in the grass, therefore it created a nuisance. And so that's my story about nuisance. Conversion: the law gives each person the right to own and use personal property without interference from others. When this right is denied or abridged by another, the wrongdoer is said to have committed a tort of conversion. So an example: a person who stole personal property and damaged it in the process can be sued for monetary damages. Lost my mouse. And it is an action of conversion. Negligence: you've heard of negligence. The tort of negligence is the failure to exercise reasonable care necessary to protect others from risk and harm. So let's end on this chapter. It's all pretty self-explanatory. That'll end what we would have covered in week 1. We would have talked a little bit more about that in depth, of course, but I saw discussion 1.2 is going good. If you had, I went in and graded one day last week, and I gave a lot of you grades. I haven't gone back in and given grades for the week 1 discussion for peer post and things like that, but I will get to that soon. Week 2 discussions, since we're here, week 2 discussions are due by Tuesday. And I just hit the chapter again instead of the PowerPoint. So make sure that you're going through doing those discussions by Tuesday. And I don't remember if I covered it last week, but you need to be logging in 3 times a week at least, so I can give you attendance points. So right now, if you're logged in, I'm going to give you attendance for this week. If you go in and you do your discussion before Tuesday, I'm going to give you attendance. I logged attendance twice. So I log attendance on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So anything you're doing over the weekend, logging in, if you're here, you're doing discussions on Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to give you attendance on Tuesday. Anything you do Tuesday evening, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to give you attendance for the week on Thursday. So make sure that you're logging in and doing that stuff. And welcome to whoever just joined us. I'm going to write you down. Whatever you did miss, if you will, after this, go back and watch it, and then kind of give me a little bit of a rundown of what you missed, because we're almost through with the class. So maybe send me, if you're just logging in, 100-word summary of what you missed this morning or this afternoon. Right now we're having issues. My computer's being slow, so we're waiting for chapter 7 to come up, and I was just kind of covering homework. So again, chapter 7, I wish I could remember I could start talking about it if I could remember what it was about. And I, again, apologize. There we go. Contracts. So a lot of this week is about contracts, and if I can hear someone's sound, so if you want to hit mute on sound. So
I'm sorry, this is Heather Chacon. I just joined. I had trouble getting on.
Oh, no worries, no worries. We got you. If you can just
Thank you.
watch what you missed, and then just let me know what you missed on a quick little rundown. You're good. No worries. I got you down for attendance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the rest of this is really about contracts, and I deal with contracts all day, every day, and they're really tricky. And if you've never dealt with any type of contract, I don't know what it is about lawyers and the law, but they like to make it as confusing as possible whenever they write legal documents. So again, I told you guys about I file liens and stuff like that. So as you can see, I'm hooked to my work email. So this is my work email. And just this last week, I got this lien waiver. So what a lien waiver is, and if you live near Tulsa Hills, we're in the process of supplying product to an Abuelo's. So there's Abuelo's coming to Tulsa Hills. So that's another exciting part about my job, is I get to see what's getting built before other people do. So here is a legal contract that I was a part of just this past week. Let's see, I had this notarized just the 23rd of January. So 5 days ago, I did this contract, and it's a great example of what we covered in this week's chapters. So to try to make it simplified, when in my business, general contractors come in and they're building an Abuelo's. This general contractor is Parks Construction. So Parks Construction is building an Abuelo's. So they are going to have contractors. They're going to contract out work. So I'm working with the contractor that is doing the plumbing and mechanical work. Ferguson Enterprises supplies plumbing, lighting fixtures, things like that. So I am working with the plumber and mechanical company here, and I told our company that I was going to use them as an example, and here is the company that is my customer. So this is my plumber mechanical worker that's buying product from me. So this lien waiver is the GC, the general contractor, is emailing me saying, hey, we are releasing money to your customer, Bean Services. And I want to make sure that Bean Services is paying on the product that you are putting in Abuelo's. Because I don't want you, and if you were here during our whole recording, I don't want you filing a lien on Abuelo's and causing issues with closing on that company. And so I get this request here, and it's called a partial waiver of lien and certification. And what this is saying is that I'm agreeing down here that as of the 19th of January, the company has paid $25,000 to cover goods. And if I logged into the system, you can see invoices, and there's invoices after the 19th of January. And that's why I added this verbiage right here through 10/31/17, because this 25 grand only pays off invoices through 10/31/17. I had to have my legal department go through and read it and make sure that we were covering everything. Because in the end, what I'm doing is saying, if I were to go and file liens on this property today, I promise I cannot waive any, I cannot file liens on any of the invoices before 10/31/2017 that are covered inside of this $25,000 payment. So as we go through this job, and there's reasons why they do this, and I'll explain that. As we go through this job, I'll get multiple liens as they pay. So this is another situation where they actually had this money for me a month or two ago. And as you can see, they're just now paying October's invoices. And so this is what I deal with all day long. They sent me in November or January, they sent me payment, but see how this says partial waiver? They wanted a final lien waiver. And sometimes companies try to pull it off on you. Sometimes I guess they're just not thinking. They were wanting a, no matter what, I waive my rights to this property and I will not file a lien. And I can't have that, because as you can see, they've paid $25,000, but they still owe me another $30,000. I've had $9,000 paid. They're paying $25,000. I'm owed $30,000. So I'm not going to release saying I promise not to file liens on this, because they still owe me money. So we went back and forth for the last 30 to 60 days saying, I need this reworded. I don't like how this is worded. I refuse to sign this. And so this is a legal contract. So if I go back and try to file a lien on this property, this Abuelos at Tulsa Hills, this company is going to come back with this sheet of paper and say, Sonia Richardson signed right here promising through the 31st of 2017 on this $25,000 that you cannot sign it. So the $25,000 here is going to pay towards this 30. I already have payment for this 9. So in the end, I'm only going to get the lien $4,000 of it. And that was my promise. That was my contract. I agreed to it. It's been notarized. And we'll talk more about that. So this is a legal document that I deal with every day. Another thing that you have to make sure, I have to make sure, is I incorporate a clause where if this check or this payment doesn't clear, this certification is void, null and void. So I have to really be careful about that, because I've had situations, and you would think big companies aren't going to have bounce checks and stuff like that, but it does happen. So I really have to be careful about that. Let's see if there's any other interesting waivers. Another thing, this one may be it. Same company. Nope. There's one company that requires that that I have to sign it in blue ink, and I can't, and it has to be the original. So I have to sign this stupid paper in blue ink. I have to get it notarized, and then I have to drive it over to my customer and get them to sign it. So, I mean, it's crazy sometimes what they ask you to do. And, earlier I was talking about what got us started on this is the crazy verbiage. And sometimes you have to be an attorney or hire an attorney to understand something that you're getting in contract with. So just for instance, the receipt whereof is hereby acknowledged by the undersigned does hereby waive and release to the extent only of the aforesaid amount any lien rights to or claim lien with respect. What? I mean, so this legal verbiage or talk is sometimes just too much to handle. So that's a little bit about contracts and how once you're in the real world, it really does come to play with what you're doing. And I never in my life imagined I would deal so much with business law. I'm a credit manager, but all day long, I mean, I have an attorney that I know by first name. We've had lunch together. We email, we text, not because we are friends, because we literally have so much business that we do together. And all of that deals with business law. So you never know when this will come into play. There it talks a little bit more about UCC. I talked about earlier how that affected me. Sources of contract law. And I did learn something about this chapter reading through this that I didn't understand, and I hope we get to it. If not, I'll touch base about it at the end. So let's see. Tangible personal property can be defined as personal property that can be moved, such as a vehicle, kitchen table, or computer. So that's something that's tangible. Common law, on the other hand, is sources of contract law regarding the sales of fixed assets, services, or intangibles. The good thing about this week is most of everything was about contract. So we don't have to really get real in depth about this week. If an agreement imposes a legal obligation, an enforceable contract results. If it imposes only a social or moral obligation, however, it is not a contract and cannot legally be enforced. So Alan promises, and we're going to change this name to Mr. K. Alan promises Mr. K, a coworker, a ride to a training seminar. Alan failed to keep the promise, and Mr. K missed the seminar. Mr. K has no legal remedy against Alan because the agreement was based on a social or moral obligation, not a legal obligation. So there's no way to sue because you couldn't make it to training, because it was just a hey, I'll take you, I promise, and that's not something he can hold him to. Let's see. Elements of an enforceable contract, offer and acceptance. So this is a really interesting case study. And whenever I got this job, I had to do a video presentation, and I did my video presentation over business law because it's something that's so interesting to me. And so elements of an enforceable contract. So everything, It takes 6 things to make a contract enforceable: offer and acceptance, mutual agreement, consideration, competent parties, legality of purpose, and proper form. So, first of all, offer and acceptance. I offer you this, you take this. Mutual agreement. We both agree that this offer and acceptance is good. Consideration. Consideration would be, it's what you're exchanging. So I'm going to give you money, you're going to give me land. That's the consideration. Competent parties, you can't have someone that's not of legal age, so they're not 15 years old, not mentally stable. They have to be competent and of legal age. Legality of purpose, the intent to contract must not violate the law. So you can't say, if you hear about these cases all the time, and it's kind of a touchy subject, but if you're a 40-year-old man and you have a contract with a 15-year-old child that breaks the law, this is not an enforceable contract. Proper form requires for contract is known as proper form. Contracts must not only be in writing, but also follow prescribed forms, such as containing the signatures of the parties. So this brings up a really neat story, or a really neat case. And it's a chance for you to get some extra credit towards something somewhere if you need it. So I'm going to offer 5 points, and I'm going to keep track of emailing me the answer. I'm going to tell you a story of a case, and if you can find the name of the case and email it to me before Saturday, I'll give you 5 extra credit points somewhere where you need it, and I'll let you know, hey, I'm giving you your 5 credit points here. So there's a case where 2 guys are, and my story may not be exact, but I found it not remembering the name of the case, so I know you can find it from the story I have. So 2 guys are in a bar, and we'll call them Guy A and Guy B. So Guy A, they're both drinking, so you have to start thinking competent parties. So mentally stable. If you're drunk, are you competent to make a decision and enter into contract? So a person A, person B at a bar drinking, having a good time. The waitress is coming around giving them alcohol. Party A says, hey, I've been thinking about selling my land, and I don't remember how much land it was or how much it was for. Thinking about selling my land for $5,000. Party B says, hey, I'll give you $5,000 for this land. Really? So they write it down on a napkin. This is a real case. The numbers aren't exact. So they write it down on a napkin. I, person A, promise to sell my land to person B for $5,000 on this napkin. Sign, date. Person B signs. They laugh, have some good beers. The waitress comes around. A few days later, here's my $5,000, or however much it was. I'm ready for my land. Person A, man, we were just having some beers. I was just teasing. I wasn't serious about that. Person B has legitimate reason to think that this was something they were executing. They have the form. They were both later decided to be competent. They even brought in the waitress to say no. They were talking the whole night, and everything was all good. And I think she maybe even overheard the sale of property. There was an offer and acceptance. They both had a mutual agreement. There was consideration, the land, the money. There was the form on a napkin. The case, who do you think won? Did person A that was like, no, we were drinking, having a good time, or the person that says, I have the money, I have reason to believe? The person B won, and so person A had to sell his land to person B. And if you can find the name of that case and email me, I'll give you 5 bonus points. So interesting story, and it's true. So a true story, a true case. So we're almost done. I know we're not going to get through all of this, but a lot of what I went over covers a lot of this week. So kinds of contracts: oral and written, expressed or implied, formal or simple, entire or divisible. Oral contracts, not in writing or signed by parties, but it's real contract created entirely by conversation of the parties. Written contracts, express contracts, you can cover all of that. Something I did want to get to, I'm looking. I don't remember if it was in this chapter. Two things I want to cover actually really quick. And you know what? Just reading through just the PowerPoints was really interesting. If you read through the chapters, it really condenses it down and gives a good summary. Avoid contracting. Earlier we were talking about those 6 items. If one of those things wouldn't have been followed through, so maybe they were too drunk to be competent, it could have been a void contract. So therefore it could not have been enforced. I'm looking for something specific, and I can't remember which. And I was actually reading over this chapter, and we travel a lot, and I read a lot of the story or the book, and I was talking to my husband about what I learned. And if I can't find it, I'll just tell you. Well, sorry, it's all jumping around. And it's probably going to take forever. Another thing it talks about in this week is it talks about like some states require like a seal, or, and I wish I could remember the exact verbiage, a seal, an embossment, something like that. And the one thing, and you could probably see my Facebook notification here. If you haven't liked our Facebook page, the Community Care College Business Administration and Accounting page, definitely go like it. We put a lot of the updates for the college on there. I like to put polls on there. And Dee, she always puts really great inspirational quotes and things on there. So go like us and follow us. If you want to be my friend on Facebook, go find me on Facebook. And I did it again where I'm trying to log on to the chapter. But anyway, so it talks about notaries and stuff. And so this is what, if you haven't been to a notary or anything, just a quick lesson on notaries is a notary is good. I'm a notary. A notary is good for, and if you ever need a notary, I'd happily meet you at the school and notarize something for you for free. So that's a free service I'll offer to you students, even if you're not my student or in my class anymore. But something to know is notaries cannot charge you more than $5 per notary. They're good for 4 years. So I have been a notary for 8 or 9 years. And Emily just emailed me her extra credit, and she's exactly right. So don't share it with the rest of the class. I'll give you your 5 points. So this is what a notary looks like. It's most of you have probably had experience with it, but if you're not, if you sell a vehicle in Oklahoma, you have to have a notary. But if you sell a vehicle in Kansas, you don't have to have a notary. And what a notary is I'm guaranteeing someone's signature. So if you are getting something notarized, and usually it's on a contract, I, as a notary, have to see the signature happen. I have to see it transact, and I have to verify that the person signing is in fact who they are supposed to be. So my other public service announcement is if you go to get something notarized and they are verifying your ID, or if you've already signed it and they're having issues with that, hey, I can get fined if I'm not doing my job. So as a notary, they that's what they're supposed to do. So don't get upset with them. Don't sign something that needs to be notarized before you get to the notary, and make sure you have your ID. I had someone tell me that her family was going to lose everything because Jill signed it, but Jill wasn't here and I wouldn't notarize it. So public service announcement for notaries. Hopefully what I wanted to show you is on here, but if not, I'll find it and I'll screenshot it to you. But I was reading through this and it said that, and I wish I could find the slide really quick. You know that car lots are closed on Sundays, and I'd always heard it was illegal, and I didn't ever understand what they meant, and it's not illegal for them necessarily to be open. I guess I don't know how car lots work, but let's see if we can find it on here really quick and I'll let you guys go. Let's do this. Okay, so agreements that violate government statutes are not enforceable by the courts. These are agreements made on Sundays or legal holidays. So I found that really interesting, and you know, I really need to do more research on this. I have a really good friend that works in car sales. And I think this is why car places are closed on Sundays, because they can't make contract, and I'll let you go in the next minute or two. They can't make contracts on Sunday from what I'm reading here. And I don't know if you guys took away the same thing. So I'm really interested to see about this, and I'm going to get with my car friend and see if this is the subject. Some statutes and local ordinances referred to as blue laws regulate the creation and performance of certain types of contracts on Sundays and legal holidays. In some jurisdictions, a contract that is made on a Sunday but carried out on a weekday is invalid. So though you did it on Sunday and you did it throughout the week where you finished it, it's invalid. In some states, a Sunday agreement must be ratified on a weekday. So though you did it on Sunday, you got to redo it. And contracts made on a legal holiday can generally be performed the next business day following the holiday. So I'm really curious. I'm going to reach out to my car friend to see if this is why no car places are open on Sunday. And I had always heard, I don't know the real legality behind it, but is this right here the reason why car places are not open on Sunday? So it's kind of an aha moment. I'm not sure. Don't take that to the bank that that's the reason, but I'm going to find out more about that and let you guys know. But that's all we'll cover for tonight. I hope it was somewhat interesting. I hope you learned a little bit. I got a couple of people. I do see the right answers coming in for that 5 points in credit. I'll write it down. I hope you guys have a great week. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope everything's working for you. I am here if you need me. This week, I'm a lot more available than I was last week, so I can help you more during the day. I hope you have a great week. Enjoy the weather, and we'll talk soon.